wasn't the win that shook Cleveland. It was what came after. One moment, the Browns had just pulled off a narrow victory. The next, their head coach was standing in front of cameras, saying something no NFL coach is ever supposed to say. Not during a win, not in front of the media, not without a plan. Kevin Stefanski, known for being composed, guarded, and calculated, broke. And with just one sentence, he flipped the entire quarterback situation upside down. Infuriated ownership shocked the locker room and ignited a storm the league still hasn't calmed. But what pushed him to that breaking point? Why did he say it now, when everything was still technically working? And what does it mean for the future of the Browns? Because this wasn't just a casual post-game comment. This was career-level honesty, the kind that leaves burns. And behind the scenes, players were already picking sides. Sources say executives froze, and ownership went nuclear. Let's break down how we got here. Because this story, it's not just about a press conference. It's about a franchise war breaking into the open, live on national television. It was supposed to be a routine post-game presser. A few quick coach-speak lines, a nod to the win, and out the door. Instead, Kevin Stefanski stood frozen behind the mic, eyes heavy, voice drained. And then he said it. Looking back, starting Dillon was a mistake. 6 words, and the room went silent. Media jaws dropped. Assistants backstage reportedly exchanged panicked glances. Ownership wasn't in the room, but they were watching. Not during a win, not with cameras rolling, and not when the quarterback you just called a mistake is still suiting up in your locker room. The internet erupted. Twitter timelines flooded. Sports anchors broke live programming. It wasn't just a shocking confession. It was an unexpected detonation that exposed every internal issue the Browns tried to hide. And fans, they didn't just react. They exploded. Because for weeks, they'd been screaming the same thing Stefanski had just admitted on national TV. And this was only the beginning. To understand the chaos, you have to rewind. Just a few weeks ago, the Browns weren't arguing about quarterback decisions. They were celebrating one. Shedeur Sanders lit up the field in a preseason game against the Panthers. Poise, precision, mobility. He looked every bit like a franchise QB. The numbers backed it up. The crowd felt it. Even the TV ratings skyrocketed, nearly 50% above projections. Everything pointed to one obvious move. Name Sanders the starter. Ride the momentum. Electrify the season. But instead, things got weird. Days later, Sanders was suddenly injured. No real details, no timeline, just gone. And then, out of nowhere, Dillon Gabriel was named the starter. Despite an underwhelming camp, despite a quiet preseason, fans were confused. Media started digging. Was Sanders really hurt, or was this a cover-up? Because something felt off. The timing, suspicious. The decision, forced. And Gabriel's first appearances, robotic, flat. The Browns won against the Eagles, but if you just looked at the scoreboard, you'd miss what everyone else saw. A lifeless offense, a disconnected tempo, and a quarterback playing like he was afraid to lose, not trying to win. Dillon Gabriel's stat line looked decent. 18 completions, 29 attempts, 173 yards. 1 pick, no touchdowns. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was everything else. He missed wide-open shots downfield, overthrew potential touchdowns. And when the game begged for momentum, Gabriel checked it down, again and again. The crowd felt it. The commentators felt it. Even executives behind the broadcast felt it, watching viewership numbers dip in real time with every stalled drive. By the 4th quarter, it was the defense bailing the Browns out, special teams securing the edge, the offense just existing. And yet, even with the win, everything felt off. On the sidelines, Stefanski looked like a man wrestling with a decision he'd already regretted. Eyes vacant, arms crossed. He wasn't watching football, he was watching consequences. That game didn't just expose Gabriel, it exposed the lie. The Browns had bet on the wrong guy, and the stadium knew it. Next came the moment no one saw coming. No one expected honesty that night. Reporters were ready for cliches, still evaluating. Team effort, we like what Dillon brings, the usual. Instead, what they got was a confession. Kevin Stefanski stepped up to the mic, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Eyes red, jaw tense, shoulders slumped. The energy wasn't victory, it was resignation. And you could hear reporters fumbling to hit record. PR reps frozen off to the side. Coaches backstage, reportedly horrified. Because what Stefanski had just done wasn't just uncommon, it was unforgivable. NFL coaches don't throw their quarterbacks under the bus after a win. They don't publicly admit to mismanaging personnel. And they definitely don't blindside their own front office on live television. But Stefanski did. And in that instant, the story wasn't just about a QB controversy anymore. It was about a franchise at war with itself. Behind that one sentence, pressure from ownership, locker room unrest, and weeks of forced silence. All of it cracked right there on the podium. And the fallout? It was already starting to explode. By the time Stefanski, sources inside the Browns organization confirm what fans suspected from the start. There was no real injury. It was a cover, a manufactured excuse to bench the rookie phenom in favor of Dillon Gabriel. Why? Because ownership didn't want Sanders. They wanted Gabriel, the quiet, coachable third-rounder who fit the system. He wasn't flashy, he didn't challenge authority, he just did what was asked. In other words, he was safe. But Sanders, he was loud, confident, sometimes defiant. A lightning rod on and off the field, the kind of energy that makes front offices nervous and fans obsessed. And Kevin Stefanski, he was stuck in the middle. Sources say he was pressured into starting Gabriel from day one, that management made the call, and he followed orders to keep the peace. But each week, the lie grew, and by the time he made it to that podium, Stefanski had a choice: tell the truth and burn the script, or keep protecting a decision that never should have been made. He chose honesty, and in doing so, may have detonated his own career. But what happened next? That's when things really turned chaotic. Inside the locker room, the reaction was immediate. Phones lit up with push notifications. Clips of Stefanski's press conference were already going viral. And for the first time all season, players weren't whispering, they were talking. Offensive linemen? Some were seen smirking. Why? Because when Sanders played, they looked better. He moved, he escaped pressure, he made them look like stone walls. With Gabriel, they struggled to hold the pocket for more than 2 seconds. Receivers? Quietly relieved. They weren't running wind sprints for nothing anymore. Sanders actually took shots. He extended plays, gave them a chance to make magic. With Gabriel, it was checkdowns and missed windows. Even players on defense started admitting what they'd been feeling. They hated practicing against Sanders because, unlike Gabriel, he was unpredictable, electric, dangerous. He made every play competitive. And then there was Sanders himself. While the franchise burned on Twitter and sports shows, Sanders stayed completely silent. No Instagram posts, no cryptic tweets, just quiet, calculated awareness. Sources say he watched everything unfold from his apartment, surrounded by his tight inner circle. Not celebrating, strategizing. And that silence, it spoke louder than anything tweeted that night. Because while Gabriel's camp scrambled for answers, Sanders sat still, like a man who already knew the storm was coming, and waited. By the time most fans had finished watching replays of Stefanski's quote, the Browns front office was already in emergency mode. Inside the owner's suite, things reportedly got heated. Jimmy Haslam, blindsided and surrounded by executives, watched his chosen quarterback get publicly discredited on live TV. According to insiders, it wasn't a calm debrief. One described it as a nuclear reaction. Furniture repositioned. Phones slammed. PR and legal teams were summoned before Stefanski even left the stadium. Because here's the real crisis. This wasn't just a football mistake. It was a public unraveling of an ownership-backed vision. Gabriel wasn't just a draft pick. He was Haslam's guy. Handpicked, supported, and elevated, even when the performance didn't back it up. And now, his head coach had behind closed doors. Legal teams began reviewing Stefanski's contract. Was this statement grounds for dismissal? Was he undermining leadership or saving the team? PR scrambled to draft clarification statements. Executives started making calls. Damage control was in full effect. Whispers say some front office members even began updating their resumes, just in case. Because the second Stefanski went off script, he didn't just challenge the pecking order, he exposed it. And for a billion-dollar organization already balancing egos, TV money, and playoff hopes, this was the kind of fire you can't spin. You just try to survive it. When you stack the two quarterbacks side by side, the difference isn't subtle. It's night and day. Dillon Gabriel, disciplined, structured, textbook technique, but robotic, conservative. His numbers in preseason weren't disastrous, but they weren't inspiring either. Short throws, safe reads, sure. But when it came time to push the ball, to improvise, to lead, he shrunk. One overthrown touchdown, one forced pick across the middle, multiple missed deep shots. And just like that, a game that could have been electric became forgettable. Then there's Shedeur Sanders. In limited preseason action, he looked like a completely different creature. Completion percentage over 70%. Yards per attempt approaching 9. Quarterback rating over 110. But forget the stats. It was the eye test that changed everything. He threw before receivers broke open. He saw pressure coming and moved like it didn't exist. He made the offense feel alive, and that matters. Because Gabriel plays not to lose. Sanders plays to dominate. He's got swagger. He's got control. And most critically, he's got that rare ability to lift the team around him, even before the snap. Now ask yourself this. One quarterback manages games. The other changes the game. And for a Browns franchise desperate for identity, desperate for excitement, desperate for relevance, there's only one option the fans believe in. But this isn't just a Cleveland problem anymore. This isn't just a Browns story anymore. This is a blueprint for disaster that every front office in the league just watched unfold in real time. Think about it. An ultra forces a quarterback. A coach caves. A better player gets sidelined. The team loses momentum, the fans revolt, and the media explodes. Then when the truth finally slips out, it's not praise that follows, it's a firestorm. And now they're asking questions about their own systems, because in today's league, talent alone isn't enough. It's about marketability. It's about emotion. It's about who makes the fans care. Gabriel might have been the safe pick, but Sanders, he's viral. He trends. He's the guy networks want in primetime because people watch. He represents the next generation of quarterback. Flashy, bold, risk-taking, market-tested. And when you sideline that, you don't just bench a player. You bench revenue, fandom, attention, culture. The NFL isn't just a league. It's an entertainment empire. And Stefanski's admission may be the trigger that forces teams to revisit their entire evaluation process. Because performance still matters, but personality, presence, and popularity, they matter more than ever. And now, other teams have a decision to make. Follow Cleveland's mistake and protect the system, or lean into the chaos and finally let the best player play. When Kevin Stefanski stood at that podium, it wasn't just a coach reflecting on a bad decision. It was a man breaking under pressure, a franchise unraveling on live TV, and a hidden truth finally ripping through the silence. He told the world what fans already knew, that Dillon Gabriel wasn't ready, that Shedeur Sanders should have been the guy all along, and that the lie they'd built their season around had finally collapsed. Now, the organization is in freefall. PR is scrambling, ownership is furious. The locker room is realigning in real time. And at the center of it all, two quarterbacks heading in opposite directions. This wasn't just about who plays on Sunday. This was about ego versus evidence, control versus instinct, system versus spark. And what Stefanski gave up in that presser wasn't just political safety. It was the illusion. Because when you finally admit the truth, you can't walk it back. And now, as cameras roll and fans reload timelines, the Browns face a choice. Double down on stability, or let go of control, and finally unleash the one player who could save their season. The question isn't whether something changed that night. It's whether Cleveland will survive it.